Hey everybody, Plushie here, and today I want to make a video about, in my opinion, the worst hot take video I've made this year. And a lot of people probably already know what I'm talking about because I got a lot of negative comments on that video. And of course, I think justified. I did a very poor sort of prediction. And the video in question is Draco's hot take, where I said she was a bit overrated. And I actually stand by a lot of points I have in that video. For example, her skill set is actually not that strong, especially compared to a lot of the top tiers. She doesn't do that much damage against non-servants, even if they are of the standard 7 classes. And of course, she completely gets destroyed by any form of extra class. So obviously, this is not nearly as much coverage as a lot of people claim her to be, because wow, if I just run into one extra class boss, she's just completely unusable. So why are people ranking her that high? Well, we're at the end of the year, and as we can see, she has been probably one of the strongest servants that was released this year, contender for even the strongest servant released in this year. So where do we go so wrong? Why did my prediction go so poorly, despite I still standing by a lot of points I made in the video? Well, simply put, the situations where she doesn't match up well into doesn't really happen in the game. Like, it barely happens throughout the entire year. So let's take a look at this year's timeline and to see how wrong I was. So the event right after the arcade collab was Iliafest, and I think my point actually holds pretty well in Iliafest because in 2 of the rotations there do contain extra class enemies, especially the first wave having Dolmont as the end boss having the most HP, and the third wave having Nidokris Alter as the second wave farming boss. And usually when you bring a single target, they also need to take up the job of clearing a high HP mid-wave boss, which is Nidokris Alter, and obviously Draco is going to struggle against that. But then things starts to go a little bit bad for me. The event right after that with the Ordeal Call 1's release, and despite this chapter supposed to be about extra classes, the entire chapter only has one extra class, aka alter ego enemy, and everything else are servants of the standard 7 classes, which gets absolutely mauled by Draco. And then the next event was Medusa Saber's tower event, and of course, you know, there aren't a lot of farming involved, but at the very least, the challenge quest is of course 3 servants of the standard 7 classes that gets absolutely destroyed by Draco. And then the next event was Summer 8. And that event actually has a challenge quest that does contain a main boss that was of the foreigner class, so it's actually not, you know, as polarizing. But the main fight, which is also the main way you're supposed to beat it, is to clear every other Artoria, and before then, Nocnaria in the middle basically doesn't do much. She's completely stunned, so she can't move. So Draco still ended up being a pretty nice option for a standard clear, despite her not being able to do the min turn. And of course, the farming node of the 90++ is again basically made for Draco, because it's a 3-1-1 node with, you guessed it, a servant in the final wave that gets completely destroyed by Draco. And then after that, we got Wangina World Tour, which is actually another interesting one. The 90++ node is Faker. Draco actually cannot farm that, which is another point for me. However, the challenge quest is yet another gauntlet filled with standard 7 class servants that gets absolutely destroyed by Draco. Oh, I forgot to mention, the challenge quest in Iliafest is also a super high HP Britomart that gets absolutely destroyed by Draco. So yeah, there you go. And during October, we got the Grailfront, and the Grailfront event actually has Typhon as one of its end bosses in the main story. But Typhon has this special trait that allows her to take triple damage from any source. So despite being an extra class enemy, Draco still absolutely destroyed them. And the hardest part about the Grailfront is actually being swarmed by a bunch of lackeys. And guess what? All those lackeys are enemies of the standard 7 classes that just cannot scratch Draco at all. And of course, the 90++ node also is just servants of the standard classes. And then November, which just happened recently, we got the new Gouda event that had a bunch of raids that contained, let's hear it, a bunch of servants of the standard 7 classes. And even worse, the final raid with the Saber that has the most amount of HP has defense up that is pierceable by Draco. Now obviously there's no way I could have seen that coming, but it's just really funny how wrong the game wants to prove that I was. And then finally, right now, we have the Christmas Lotto event, and I was partially right about this because the 90++ end boss is a demon pillar that isn't actually a servant, and Draco's damage does actually fall off significantly compared to some other single target riders. So after tallying up everything that happened this year, yeah, there has been, you know, situations where Draco doesn't really match up that well into, but 90% of the time, she kind of just destroys everything in her path. And I feel like the game would just keep on releasing mostly servants of these 7 classes, no matter in farming or in challenge quests. And there's another thing I severely underestimated about Draco in the review, which is her defensive capability. I said that her damage is not that great compared to other berserkers, so why are you valuing her this much? Well, because of the defensive utility. When you're fighting in a challenge quest and you don't care about dealing that much damage and clearing everything in the minimal amount of turns, that defensive utility comes into play a lot. Because remember, every time you fight a boss and you brought like a counter class and you suddenly feel like you are just unkillable because you're taking half damage forever, well, yeah, imagine that happening to all 7 classes that are the most common enemies in the game. That sounds really broken. Even though your damage is not that good against them sometimes, you don't really have to worry about that because you can stay for a very long time on the battlefield as well. So in short, I completely underestimated Draco. Her class really did carry her super hard, and I just simply did not have the vision to see how hard she would get carried by that class advantage. But yeah, anyways, this was a random video I just wanted to make, and sort of explaining why I title my video Hot Takes, because despite how much I trust and believe in my own theories about a servant, and me actually did test her out before I make the video, without seeing how other future events will go, I don't really think it's that easy to have a definitive take on any servant. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Happy New Year, and see you guys in the next one.